like many of you, I didn't expect to be doing an online conference after last year. But moving forward, it's going to be part of the future. Online, in person, who knows? God does. And I just want to do a few things first. Right at the outset, I want to say thank you. I want to honour you. As you've served or tried to serve your communities, I want to honour you as sports chaplains as you go to meet that community, to meet the need. I want to honour my team, the wider Sports Chaplaincy UK team, trustees and leadership team. I want to thank them for, even in this season of challenge, they've stepped up to the plate. I know many of you will have been in contact, telephone, texts, Zooms, and everything else like that. But I just want to honour my team and thank Matt and Mark and Martin and Phil in everything that they're doing, really at the coalface, supporting you guys as you serve the wider community. And I also want to thank those who've gone before us. You know, part of how we go forward is always about thanking those who've gone before us, and we honour those. And in this season, it's been challenging. Matt shared that. It's been challenging for each and every one of us. And I know for me personally, and some of you will know this, I lost my mum. And I'm not going to deny that that's not an easy thing to grieve in that sense. I've got a lot to be grateful for. She's up in glory celebrating now. But the journey of this last year or so, 18 months, has been challenging for us in many, many ways, in work, in church, in life, in family. And so I don't want to sort of belittle that in that sense. But I do want to say, what is healthy for you? As a plane aims for its destination, the winds of life knock it off course. And the challenge is how we get back on course. We've got to make course corrections. But right now there is an opportunity to stop and pause and reflect and say, God, what do you want us to do for the future? And I want to ask this question. I've been reading a couple of books that I found really helpful. One called Replenish by Lance Witt, and the other one, The Advantage by Patrick Leonce. And a lot of those books are about asking questions, but one of them in particular is about what does healthy look like? And I want to challenge you with that question right at the outset of conference. What does healthy look like for you? What does healthy look like for your family, for your church, for the communities God's asked you to serve? And I mean, does that mean you've got to make some course corrections? There's nothing wrong in finding yourself off course. What's wrong is when you've realised that you're off course and we don't make those course corrections. And I do believe for this season, as we move forward, more than ever before, as chaplains, as leaders, we've got to lean into God. We've got to pray more than we've ever prayed. We've got to have an ear inclined to his voice so we can take a prophetic and be a prophetic voice into our families, into our churches and into our communities. But we can only do that effectively if we're leaning into God. And so I want to say, what does healthy look like? Does that mean spending more time in your word, spending more time praying, spending more time just being? And so it's not a pointing the finger. This is about we're in it together. This is God's kingdom work. We're not there to say, hey, we're doing it all right. We're not. We're in God's work together. I want to remind you, and we met 7 years ago as a leadership team, and we have a dream. We believe it's a God-given dream, and I don't believe that dream's changed. That God wants to see an expression, we want to see an expression of God's love and compassion in every community called sport. See an expression of his love and compassion in every community called sport. What does that look like for you? What does that look like for your local church? What does that look like for you and your family? You know, this season's forced us to look inwardly at times. It's forced us as churches that we've not had or been able to even have people in our buildings. But as we've seen that paradigm shift take place, maybe not just run back to what was, because I don't believe what was is what God wants us for the future. I believe that paradigm shift is really challenging us. What does go look like? What does go look like for our future? What does go look like for your church, for you as you pursue God's plans and purposes? So I'm not saying this from a position of strength, but I am saying it from a position of humility. One of the things through the journey with my mum's illness and then to her passing away was God was really speaking to me about the temporal and eternal. You know, so often we do things and we get upset and we're trying to do things for the now. But actually, what is God wanting us to do that have eternal consequences, that have eternal effects? And so for me, we're not doing a 1 to 3 year business plan. We are talking 5, 10, 15, 20, 40 years discipleship journeys. But what's God wanting you to do that has eternal impact, eternal qualities? So often we do things, and I share this really personally, that when my mum passed away, people didn't tell and get up on stage and say, hey, she left a big house, she left a big balance, she drove nice cars. No, what they shared was this incredible lady who never had a platform, loved people, she prayed for people, she made people feel important, precious and important in that sense. And that, as we move out of this pandemic, what is God asking you to do? So often we think it's the big things in life, but so often it's the small things done consistently, recognizing, speaking hope, speaking life. So I want to encourage you, as we go through this conference, as we hear some of the challenges that people have been through, what can we glean? What have we learned through this past season? And what is God saying, hey, this is what we want you to do as a body of people. I want you to do this. As an individual, you need to maybe change stuff. And that might be physical, it might be emotional, it might be spiritual, it might be eating better. I've lost a little bit of weight. Why? Because there was a little bit of a crisis. And sometimes you've got to amend your life, but don't wait for the crisis before you have to make those amendments. Why don't we get those amendments and those course corrections done now before it becomes a crisis? Why can't we do those things right now? So I want to encourage you, lean into this conference, get your notepads out, glean everything you can from the speakers. They're world-class speakers, and share with each other. And remember that God has the best for you. But for us to fulfill everything that God has for us, we've got to lean in more than ever before. We've got to pray more than ever before. And I believe as sports chaplains, we've got to be prophetic more than ever before. We've got to hear God's voice and take that prophetic voice of justice, that prophetic voice of love, grace and mercy into those communities that He's placed you. So, hey, we're going to go into a conference right now, and we've got some wonderful devotions as well. Dofa is going to be doing the devotion next, but I just want to encourage you, just before we stop, in the business of life, pause and say, God, what does healthy look like for me? What does healthy look like for my family? What does healthy look for my community? What do I need to do? What are those small little adjustments I need to do? I want to encourage you that lives are impacted. I didn't know that for my mum. My mum wouldn't have known this, but we were getting cards of people that had only met my mum once. And for me, that's incredibly humbling. Why? Because they just said, I met her, she prayed for me, and she spoke into my life. Don't ever underestimate the small things that you do. When I started sports chaplaincy, my role as a chaplain, I wondered what it was about, but God said, Paul plants, Apollo waters, but God makes grow. I want to encourage you to carry on planting seed. Don't be dispersuaded that times have changed. God knows what He's doing. God's called you to stand firm and be you in the community He's placed you. What seeds are you planting? What seeds are you watering? It's God who makes grow. I hope you have a fantastic conference. Bless you.